Welcome to an all-new episode of Sports Path. On this week's show, we watch as the White Bear boys team demolishes Tartan on the lacrosse field, 18-0, folks. Then we head over to Van Ness Heights for an all-new segment called Former Fab Four, where we welcome home some former Fab Four athletes from their time in South Korea. All that and more as we take you down the Sports Path. Well, folks, it's good to be back here at SEC Sports. We haven't had Sports Path for quite some time, but without further ado, we're going to get right into social media montage. Well, it's been a while since our last show, and we want to start out like we always do. Our first tweet comes out from the Xcel Energy Center. This one comes from the Minnesota Hockey Magazine. Big night at the Xcel Energy Center tonight with USA Hockey Women's Olympic team members Maddie Rooney, Danny Camarisi, Lee Steckline, Kelly Panek, and all of them got to throw out the first, drop the puck at the Minnesota Wild game. So congratulations to them. And next we have a tweet coming from Brian Munter, Activities Director over at Tartan High School. With all the snow on the ground still for this spring, and with the recent snowstorm, some of the spring athletic teams have had to get creative to practice indoors. What do we have here? I see some tennis rackets. I see a net. It looks like the boys tennis team has set up a makeshift tennis court in the cafeteria to get some practice in. I wonder if it plays the same as a regular tennis court. Not very likely. And that net looks a little low to me. Well, it's good to see that the teams are getting creative with practices and making the most of their short spring season there over at Tartan. Now we'll look at it with a little extra snow on the ground after this past weekend. It's safe to say that many groups will have to move indoors to practice, but where will they move? Not to the Van Ness Sports Dome. The freezing rain, the heavy snow from this past weekend's blizzard created a sag in the center of the dome. That sag had prevented the dome from shedding the excess snow, and eventually it led to the dome collapsing. Sounds familiar to Minnesota sports fans as the Metrodome collapsed in recent memory. At least they replaced that stadium, but I don't think that county has $1 billion like the Twins and the Vikings and even the Gophers do at the Van Ness Sports Dome. So the only option here is to repair that thing. But don't forget, you can always tweet at me at JohnSECTV or at SECTV Sports to catch up on all your latest news here, or as well as to tweet at us for the social media montage, and that'll be it for the social media montage. Yeah, now we're going to get to some very exciting news. Some national letters of intent were actually signed over the past month. Some District 622 athletes from North and Tartan High signed national letters of intent to play College-8 athletics next year. If you take a look down the list, you'll see some familiar names from sports that we have covered here at SEC. Corey Gunther has been seen on the wrestling mat here on SEC Sports. He will be headed to Concordia University to play football. And now also from North High, star guard Bryce Phillips will be playing basketball at UW River Falls next year. And another one from North, Charisma Hurd, will play volleyball at Upper Iowa University. On the Tartan side, Zoe Colshaw-Klein will play both hockey and lacrosse at College of St. Benedict. And down the list a little bit, Gabby Hicks will run track at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. So congrats to all the District 622 athletes playing college athletics next season. We've had a great time covering all the teams here for this 2017-2018 season, and we wish you luck next year in college. Now, we're going to shift from some happier news to some very sad news that we don't want to report it all, but White Bear Lake football head coach Ryan Bartlett went into the doctor doing a large lymph node, and after some testing, Coach Bartlett was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. A GoFundMe page was set up after they heard the news. The story on the GoFundMe page says the money raised here will help make ends meet as he navigates treatment and provides a small amount of stress relief for the family. And to donate, you can go to GoFundMe.com and search Ryan Bartlett and family. The campaign has already reached almost $18,000 of its $20,000 goal. It's great to see the White Bear Lake community step up and support Coach Bartlett. We certainly send our thoughts and prayers here from the SEC family as the Bartlett family goes through their tough time. Now with that news, we've actually got White Bear Lake Activities Director Brian Peliquin standing by on the phone for an all-new edition of Hold the Phone. Well, Brian, I'd like to thank you here for joining us here on what is your second edition of Hold the Phone.
Thanks again for having me. Had a conversation earlier in the year and obviously had my introduction meeting, and I'm happy to be back and having a conversation about how the winter went and looking forward to how the spring's going to go once it warms up.
Yeah, now before we get into the winter and spring sports, let's jump to football. Obviously some pretty big news about the head coach Ryan Bartlett. Give us a little bit about a little update on what the program, how it's going right now.
Yeah, I'm working with Coach Bartlett. He and I talk every day. It's a very promising outcome and kind of a best case scenario for a man of his age with a young family to come down with the cancer that he came down with. And we are working together. The football season is a long ways out, but we're putting things in place to make sure that he's going to get the support he needs, whether he is well enough through his therapy and the things that he needs to do for his condition, or whether he's given some of the reins to some of his assistants. I think either way, we are planning for all scenarios, but obviously hoping our best case scenario is that he's not impacted with what he needs to do to get healthy, and he's able to be here full time as our head coach again next year.
Yeah, and some more sad news to report. Longtime Bears football coach and former athletic director Bob Jackson actually passed away on March 31st. Brian, not sure if you were really around during his time as football coach, but tell us what he really meant to that football program.
Well, a very strong connected legacy. I've had people reaching out from all over the place, number one, wanting to help out, wanting to do memorial, celebration of life, wondering what the school is doing. People he's impacted, whether it's players, coaches, community members. It was definitely easy to see that he lived, breathed, and bled White Bear Lake, orange and black, and he was definitely missed. It was definitely sudden, and I think it took a lot of people by surprise. There are still many things in place that were created during his time as both the head football coach and the AD here that we still hold true, and that will leave a lasting legacy with him.
Yeah, now switching it up here, Brian, what continues to be a very depressing spring to the start. With 1.5 feet of snow last weekend, that must be impacting your guys' spring schedules. The snow even collapsed the Vadnais Sports Center. How is your guys' schedule shaping up?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions from different media outlets about how the weather is impacting our scheduling, and obviously getting 1.5 feet of snow like we got here in White Bear Lake this weekend isn't helping the cause, and we've got all of our teams itching to get outside to be able to do their thing. But to be honest with you, facilities was somewhat manageable until that dome collapsed. We were planning on having 16 hours of dome time this week for our teams, especially our lacrosse teams, our boys and girls lacrosse teams, and our baseball and softball teams, who struggle to be able to do what they need to do in a gym space and in a gym setting. And so not only to help alleviate some of the space issues we have within our district, but also to give them an opportunity to have more real-life-like practices, that dome time was going to be huge. And so that really made our next couple of weeks until that snow melts go from being manageable to pretty unmanageable. But we're going to have to go through it. It's just like everybody else. We're fighting the same battle, but that dome was definitely a huge part of us trying to battle Mother Nature. And with that gone, it's become much trickier than we ever planned on it being.
Yeah, now Brian, let's back it up a little bit to this past hockey season. It looked like this was the year that White Bear could really beat Hill Murray after Hill Murray's really had your guys' number, but it was the same old story once again. They lost to the Pioneers to end of the year. What is this boys hockey team looking like over the next couple of years, Brian?
You know, I think that night it was a hard-fought game for those who were in attendance, and Hill Murray just took more advantage of the opportunities that they had and the scoring chances they had, and put the puck in the back of the net. And it was an unfortunate loss to Hill Murray and an unfortunate loss for this community who had some pretty high hopes for this year's team. We obviously graduated all 3 members of our top offensive scoring line, but looking forward to the future, we've got a lot of talent coming back, and we also have a team that won the A-Bantam State a couple of years ago that are going to be coming into their prime as juniors next year. And so I think for the short-term future, the future obviously looks really bright for White Bear, and we're really confident that we can continue to have the success that we had this year. Obviously, the well-known Owen Gallatin leaving to go to the U.S. Developmental League is going to hurt us defensively. We thought we were going to have our top defensive pairing back, and so that's going to have to be a hole that we have to fill. But I'm confident Coach Sager will find a replacement that will fill that hole and kind of the next man up, and away we'll go.
Yeah, now the boys lacrosse team, they kind of teased us a little bit. They got one game in before the blizzard. How good are the White Bear Lake spring sports teams, Brian?
It's obviously pretty hard to tell. I know that our boys lacrosse coach has a lot of confidence going into this season with the team that we've got returning and the talent that is on the team this year. Obviously, you know, we haven't had too many games. Our one test was a pretty good game against a section opponent who's given us everything they can over the years. Both our girls and boys track teams are going to be strong. We've got about 120 kids out and pretty deep team, so we're looking to see how we'll do, especially in the true team section. As far as baseball and softball is concerned, it's kind of up in the air because we really have no guess and view on how they are. We've got a new head baseball coach this year, and I know it's been a bit of a struggle, but he's been really patient with how things are going, and I think he's excited to get outside and see what we can do as a team. And then with our girls softball team, we've got a lot of returners coming back. Several of them have been starting since they were 8th and 9th grade, and they're coming up to be juniors and seniors. And so we've got an experienced team. It's just a matter of whether or not that experience can parlay them into wins over the season. So we'll see once we get out there. Obviously, the baseball and the softball are going to be our last teams to get outside, and we're still not certain when that's going to happen. So we got to let Mother Nature kind of take care of things from now on.
Yeah, Brian, well, that's all we got for you. We'd like to thank you for being here for your second edition of Hold the Phone.
Thanks again for having me, and have a great night. Take care.
Yeah, you too, Brian. We're truly excited to start covering spring sports, and definitely the White Bear Lake. They always have a great program. But there you have it, folks. The activities director shared his inside scoop about what was going on at White Bear Lake. This has been the most recent edition of Hold the Phone. Well, the Olympics have been over for quite some time, but some of you may know that we have a couple of Olympic athletes right in our own backyard. Recently, Vadnais Heights welcomed home a couple of women's hockey players. One of them was part of the gold medal team. Check out who it is on this week's edition of Former Fab 4.
Great honor to be able to host a party for these great young women and everything that they've accomplished, not only abroad at the Olympics, but here locally. And you know, they really are great ambassadors for our community, and we're happy to have a little, fun, short celebration to recognize them and show them we really appreciate all they do.
Winning a gold medal, it was a dream come true. I mean, we worked so hard for it as a team. and just to kind of finally have that happen, it's just incredible, and it's been amazing to be able to share it with people all over the country.
I feel like I've run out of words, you know, like incredible, overwhelming, unbelievable. It's like all of that and more.
We hope to inspire young girls to want to play hockey. It's taught us so much, and we just hope it makes an impact with them as well. So it's great seeing all the kids come out and, yeah, hopefully, you know, inspire them to play and love the game.
We want to inspire the next generation of girls, and I would just tell them you can do anything you set your mind to, and we're just trying to keep that going and just keep inspiring young girls.
Hannah Brandt recently came back to our studio for an interview. Don't forget to tune in on May 2nd at 7 p.m. as it airs in our next episode of Sports Path. And with that, let's get into some spring sports. We're going to start out with Tartan versus White Bear Lake lacrosse. This one was at Tartan High School, and folks, this was quite the honor. You know, White Bear Lake faces off against Tartan as we got here. First goal comes about 4 minutes in. A pass across to Kyle Preslowski. He rifles it in. That's Preslowski's first goal of the year and for White Bear Lake. 1-0 White Bear. 4 minutes later, a pass ahead to Eric Bloom. He gives him a chance on the net. He makes it 2-0. Goalie tried to save that one. Now second quarter now, ball behind the net. Eventually Ethan Menny nets his first goal of the season. 3-0 White Bear Lake, and they're starting out this season the right way. Taking it midway through the second, guarded heavily by Tartan. The ball gets passed into Jace Goodrow, who gets his first goal, making the game 4-0 now. And folks, the slaughter would not stop here. Just a couple minutes later, once again, Menny nets his second goal on a bouncing shot into the back of the net. 5-0 now, White Bear Lake. As you can see, Menny's excited. White Bear Lake's getting hot. Once again, familiar name, Jace Goodrow behind the net. He draws defenders, gets it up to Eric Bloom, who fires it in for his second goal. 6-0 here as Goodrow fires that one in. 3 minutes left in the first half here. Eventually, Preslowski scoops it up the loose ball. He'll throw this one in there, right past the attempt there by the goalie. 7-0 lead for White Bear. Now 45 seconds until the end of the first half. Ball behind the net now, up in front for Bloom. Bloom gets his third goal of the game. He rifles that one in. The Tartan goalie just had no answer for this White Bear Lake offense. It's 8-0. Now still in the first half, camera guy will eventually here, I have no idea where the ball is, but we do. It eventually gets down to Menny across in front of the goal, making it 9-0. Now finally, after a 9-0 first half, we'll get to the second half. As the ball gets up top, it's passed right in front of the net. Eventually, Thomas Boudreau fires it in for his first goal of the season. 10-0 White Bear Lake. Ball up top once again. Goalie tries to make a diving save. Let's see if he makes it. That he will not, making it 11-0 White Bear Lake. This game is continuing to be a blowout. We'll skip ahead a little bit. Let's get to the end of the third quarter. Another new name, Jack Raphael, nets his first goal of the season right here. Just rifling that one in. 14-0 now. Flag comes down after the goal, but don't worry, the goal still counts for White Bear Lake. Now once again, Kyle Preslowski, he'll have it behind the net. He fakes out the defenders with a pass at the top. Nice move. He shoots that one in. 15-0 White Bear Lake. There's still 4 minutes to go in the third. Pretty sure it's running clock at this point. Ball goes behind the net, but then back up front to number 22, Adam Woodcock. His first goal of the season, making this 16-0. How many goals can we get up to, folks, for this White Bear Lake team? At least a couple more on a breakaway here. Eventually, the pass gets to Denault. Fires it in. 17-0 White Bear Lake Bears. Denault's first goal of the season now. A little deja vu here. Denault gets his second goal soon after. The ball gets dropped. Denault scoops it, puts it in. Tartan goalie just falls down. He has no answer for this team, and that's it. Final score for the opening game of the season, 18-0 White Bear Lake. We got caught up with leading scorer Eric Bloom after the game.
I think we were ready for it. We've been practicing outside a couple times, and we were just ready. The cold doesn't really affect us. We're just pumped. Great whole team win. The defense, you got to give it up for them. No goals. That's a big feat for them. And the offense, we're just firing on all cylinders, so couldn't ask for more. We're just bringing the intensity. I think we just know what we're capable of now, and yeah, we're pumped up.
Now we're going to go into a little bit of a spring sports preview, baseball and softball, taking a look at last year's boys baseball standings. Tartan finished first in the Metro East Conference, going 14-2 in conference, 16-4 overall, but they didn't make it past the sections in Class 4A. Matamidi, on the other hand, in 3A, made it all the way to the state tournament, but lost to Waconia in the first round at the University of Minnesota at Siebert Field. And those are the only teams of our Fab Four, as White Bear Lake and North had down years to do anything, but White Bear Lake has hired a new baseball coach for this season, so we'll see how he can turn around this team, as well as Sam Erickson coaching that 9th grade team. Good luck, Sam. And now looking at softball, North St. Paul went 18-2 and crushed the Metro East last year. Unfortunately for them, they were bounced from the sections in a tough Class 4A. Now the rest of the Fab Four did nothing, so we go to lacrosse. Lacrosse preview starts out with the boys lacrosse. Matamidi had an absolutely outstanding team last year. They went undefeated in conference, one game better than Tartan. They made it all the way to the Class 3A state tournament, but lost in the third place game. Tartan was bounced out of the section playoffs. They had an outstanding year, finishing second in the sections, and White Bear Lake tied for first in the Suburban East last year. Unfortunately for them, they were bounced out of the section playoffs in Class 4A as well. Now we'll shift over to girls lacrosse. All of our Fab Four teams last year had decent years. None of them were able to reach the state tournament. None of them made it out of the sections. But folks, we had not too many highlights this week, so we're going to do another Hold the Phone. Yeah, no, on the phone we have Brian Mutter, Activities Director over at Tartan, for his second Hold the Phone, just like Brian Peliquin. Well, Brian, thanks for joining us on another edition of Hold the Phone.
Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you know, this past winter sports season, girls basketball had a huge upset in the section quarterfinals against White Bear Lake, and that game actually came down to a last-second shot in the final seconds of the game, actually a three-pointer. That must have been really exciting for this girls basketball team.
It was a very fun environment, really competitive game. You know, our section for girls was tough, and you know, we even played a non-conference game with Stillwater earlier in the year and had beat them, and they were the 2 seed, we were the 5, so it was a real competitive grouping of teams. And you know, we knew going to White Bear that was going to be a difficult game, but it turned into a really, really good, fun atmosphere. And came down to the wire, and fortunately we're able to make a play, and Kendra hit a shot that made it was really exciting and really fun. You know, that it's always nice to have those moments for kids. I mean, that's what you're really looking for, is to have those experiences. Obviously, it's nice to win, but that's a lifelong memory for many of those kids. And so it was exciting and fun, and glad we came out on top.
Yeah, flipping over to the boys basketball side, their year came down to a big game against the North Polars, led by Damian Johnson. That game came down to the last few seconds, too. Why don't you tell us a little bit what that rivalry is like in that big atmosphere, Brian?
Absolutely, it's a big rivalry, and we've had many good games in the last few years. You know, another example of how good our section was. North was 22-4, and so were we. We were both 22-4, and they were the 4 seed, and we were the 5, which is pretty crazy. That normally that might be the 1 and the 2 seed in a section, but it was the rubber match, as you'd call it, because they had beat us early on their floor, and we had won at Tartan in the regular season. So, you know, the third game was the charm, another really good game. To be honest, we'd have liked to have that game be later in the section than do it right away, right in the quarterfinal. You know, would have liked to have maybe seen another team to start with, but, you know, that's just the way it played out. And, you know, another great atmosphere, another really good game, came right down to the wire. Good news, ended up making a great play, getting a put back attempt and making 2 free throws, and you know, they just made one more play than we did. But you know, that's what what high school sports is about, is to put kids in those competitive situations. And every time you step on the floor, you're not only giving yourself a chance for a high like our girls did against White Bear, or a tough loss, which happened with the boys, but an overall really good season for both groups.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to watch Anton Kimmon's senior season, but let's get over to spring sports. With the huge snow that fell this past weekend, it must be really difficult to reschedule practices, the games. And we saw a few of your photos on Twitter with the tennis team having to get a little creative practicing indoors. Why don't you tell us how difficult it is, to reschedule these games because of the snow?
It's obviously very difficult and not ideal. We're Minnesotans. We know this is a possibility. We've been blessed the last 3 years of having good spring weather. 2013 was a similar nightmare year, but not quite this much snow. So this has been quite difficult. What's frustrating is, our spring sports are all outside activities, and so for the first 6 weeks of their season, they're inside, and you just can't do the same things inside. Some sports can do a little bit more. I think baseball and softball can get some good repetition in the cage, or some of the things they can do in the gym. They can do some decent things, but it's just so hard for track and for lacrosse and golf to mimic their competition in a gymnasium. It's just not the same thing. It's not what they want, and so it's obviously been frustrating and disappointing, and you feel for the seniors because you want them to have a great experience. But, I think our kids and our coaches are doing a great job of being creative, trying to make it fun. Like you saw a couple of my pictures, you said I thought it was pretty funny and cool that when we're in the hockey arena and we have tennis nets being held up by hockey nets. So they're making the best of it, and we're really hopeful that the forecast is right moving forward here, that we have some good weather coming up, and hopefully things dry out fast so our kids can have a season to remember. Even though it will, I'm sure they'll look back and talk about the crazy spring of 2018, but hopefully it finishes on a high note for them.
Yeah, well, Brian, that's all we've got for you. We'd like to thank you for your second edition of Hold the Phone, and have a good night.
Absolutely. Really appreciate the work you guys do at Channel 19 and the coverage of our sports. I know our kids appreciate it, and it allows some people that maybe don't get exposure to what they're doing to see that. So we appreciate your work, and hopefully you'll be outside covering us soon.
Yeah, we're super excited to cover you guys. Thanks again for Brian for joining us. This has been an all-new edition of Hold the Phone. All right, for Athletes of the Week this week, folks, we're going to change it up a little bit. I'm going to give my athletes to be on the lookout for in the spring on my latest edition of Athletes of the Week. Yeah, now for my male athlete of the week to keep an eye out on for the spring, I'm going to go with Timmy Lindquist, lacrosse attackman from Matamidi, the multi-sport star as a junior, as a senior. Last year as a junior, he had 29 goals and 18 assists. And in the section playoffs, Matamidi played 3 games and he had 23 points, 15 goals, and 8 assists. Lindquist will be one of the top scoring players in the state this year, and I expect the Zephyrs to make it back to the state tournament this year, maybe even win it all. Takes expose me. If you follow Twitter, you know what that is. And now for my female athlete to be on the lookout for, I had to go with North St. Paul sophomore softball player Jenna Rebelke. She was outstanding, leading the Polars in hits last year as a freshman on their way to a Metro East section title. She should continue to improve, and the Polars look to make it beyond the sections this year. Well, we look forward to seeing all of you play this spring, and if you play hard, you just might be my athlete of the week. Yeah, up next for you, we got upcoming broadcast here on April 30th. We have boys tennis. That one's White Bear Lake versus Maple Grove. Don't go anywhere. We got that super good interview on May 2nd for Sports Path on May 2nd. That's live at 7 p.m. And then depending on weather, we got boys lacrosse, White Bear Lake versus Stillwater, and then a big one, Tartan versus Matamidi. And then, of course, folks, we don't just cover the main sports. We got Ultimate Frisbee, the Classic Suburban Championship on May 18th. So for all of you here on, watching SEC Sports, we'd like to thank you guys for tuning in and hope you guys have a wonderful night.